Hello, everybody. A warm welcome to you all to the week two of DevToberfest Tooling and Frontend Tuesdays. DevToberfest is a celebration of learning where you learn about the upcoming SAP technologies, get your hands dirty, and work on hands on tutorials, take part in fun events, and earn points. Here is the real stuff. The top 10 winners will be awarded a grand prize of an all expense covered trip to 2026 Decade location. Hope this information excites you. I am Rekha Dr, developer advocate at SAP and host for this session, multi-tenancy support within SAP Build Work Zone. You could all ask your questions throughout the session in the YouTube live chat. Now let's welcome our guest speakers, Yumna Abbasi and Rupam Bhattacharya. Yumna is a senior product manager, SAP Build. She is a product enthusiast specializing in SAP Build. She is focused on empowering businesses with intuitive tools, driving adoption, and showcasing innovation. She is passionate about personal branding and proudly represents SAP as a corporate voice. Rupam is a senior product manager, SAP Build. He is passionate about digital experiences, AI, and spends free time building robots with Legos and playing video games. Now I will hand over to Yumna and Rupam. Please take it away.
Thank you so much, Rekha. I'm also happy to be here with Rupam today and take you through a very exciting topic. Rupam, do you want to start with a short introduction of yourself or say hi to everyone?
Hey, hi. Thanks, Rika, for the introduction. And yes, Yumna, please take away.
Thank you. So I started just sharing my screen, just showing you what we're going to be presenting today and beginning with the yeah. So we will be talking about multi-tenancy support within SAP Build Work Zone, as Rekha just mentioned. And just to start off with a short introduction to what or the agenda will be today, we will be looking into the introduction to LEP, which is local entry point within SAP Build Work Zone. Then we talk about the value of LEP and the multi-tenancy support. It brings quite some value, so we're happy to show that. And then we have a demo flow to show you how you as a developer can leverage all of this that we will be talking about. So lots of showing, lots of things in action. So we're happy to. Are you ready, Rupam? Let's get started then.
Yes.
Okay. So, Rupam, what do you think about, have you ever felt or have you ever tried to integrate like a complex business application across different customer environments in SAP BTP, so the business technology platform? And sometimes it can be like building a Lego castle, so where every single brick comes from a different, totally specialized box. And then it can get incredibly complex. Sometimes it's, especially if you're like a software as a service provider, so like a SaaS provider. And on top of that, you have to provide like single role-based entry points to the SaaS applications and a uniform user experience, of course. And all of this could be very challenging. And while today we are doing like a deep dive into something really exciting, a development that really, really promises that will dramatically simplify this whole process. It is the new local entry point concept. So we call it the LEP within SAP Build Work Zone. And we want you to understand not just what is LEP, but really how it works, what problems it's fundamentally solving, why how it is such a game changer, and how not just technically, but also for the business agility. So like the scalability of SaaS providers on BTP, maybe also how it makes the experience more seamless for our customers. So let's start unpacking this together, Rupam.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you look at how multi-tenant application deployments have evolved over time. It requires integrating these HTML5 business solutions from SaaS providers on BTP across multiple sub-accounts so that they can be subscribed and used from consumer sub-accounts. So these are sub-accounts that are like dedicated cloud environments for each customer and can be an administrative challenge for customers of these SaaS solutions when you have lots of bells and whistles to fix before you can get started. So can you maybe walk us through some of those specific pain points, Jumna? What did that administrative overhead actually look like for providers and consumers day to day?
Yes, exactly. That's a great question. So imagine, so just this sheer effort you have to make for each customer, each new tenant meant that this maze of manual configuration that you have to go through, you got to spin up dedicated instances, you have to manage permissions separately, you need to make sure that you have the right access to, like a seamless access so every single time. So it's not just a technical thing, but it's like a real drag on scaling, on getting the products out quickly. And honestly, just delivering a consistent experience, it really felt like a lot of custom and a lot of manual job every time.
Absolutely. And previously, we used the older technology called Cloud Portal for the older multi-tenant setups, which was not based on the modern content federation, which basically is WorkZone's forte. This really champions this particular uniformity of content federation across systems, including BTP SaaS solutions. So imagine this uniformity of content federation can be equated to how we represent, let's say, music on notations, right? Everyone plays by the same sheet in a symphony, so they're all in sync. And imagine you can expect the same notation style consistent across all symphonies and orchestras. So it would be so easy to play, right? That's exactly what the uniformity of our content federation within WorkZone brings.
Yes, and so before it wasn't coordinated, it was a total chaos and many custom extensions, diverse usage model, and so on. So this LEP sounds like a much needed, like a conductor stepping in, basically, right?
Totally. Basically, SAP Build works on standard supporting multi-tenant entry points uh, started, I mean, since Q3 2024. They used a centralized instance and a managed app router. So you had to have the workzone instance. It helped unify the content federation model from BTP-based SaaS solution with the other content federations that we already know of, let's say from LB solutions like S4HANA and SuccessFactors and how they expose content to WorkZone. So yeah.
Yes. Yes, that was like last year, that was like a big improvement, of course, definitely. But then there was still so much space, there was so much still burden placed on this administrative burden on the consumer side. So they still had to do so many things, and so this centralized approach was a step. But now but maybe that was not the final destination. So now LEP comes in, and how do we aim? And we aim that this would be now different.
Well, can you elaborate how LEP managed to streamline things so dramatically since the last release, and how does it lift that admin burden almost entirely from the customer?
So the local entry point is basically introduced like a service plan, and it sits under the existing SAP Build Work Zone standard service. You should think of it essentially as a managed reuse service, so specifically for the SaaS application developers, and sort of like a specialized pre-configured launchpad service. And it is built on multi-tenancy, and it handles a lot of the heavy lifting that had to be done before. Now it handles it automatically. And the key benefit here is that when a SaaS solution gets subscribed to in a consumer sub account, LEP just automatically generates a standalone entry point for this site.
Which means that consumer, they don't need to really manually create anything. I mean, they don't even need to have a workzone instance on their tenant specifically for these kind of LEP-based SaaS solutions, right? So can you share some immediate benefits a customer or a consumer would actually feel because of that?
Yes, of course. Some of the immediate benefits is, as we talked about, how it drastically reduces the admin tasks. So for the consumer, getting a new business app isn't this big administrative project anymore. It becomes more like almost instant, integrated experience out of the box. And first of all, LEP is the successor of how people currently use the SAP Cloud Service Launchpad module and SaaS solutions, different SaaS solutions. And then a point to note is also that it's only available for multi-tenant apps. So unlike the cloud portal service, LEP doesn't support the single tenant solution. And we would recommend that our audience, they use either the Work Zone standard or advanced edition subscription for each of these scenarios.
That's a very valid and a key topic that we must clearly lay out. But the other key difference I would say is that there's no work zone site administration capabilities on the consumer side. So if you're using local entry point model, the site behavior is entirely defined and controlled by the SaaS provider, while the site settings embedded within the SaaS solution itself. So the consumer doesn't get site administration as you would with a work zone instance.
Yes. So now let's look into a bit of let's go into the last Oktoberfest session. I remember Rupam, you discussed that how since last year, SAP Build Work Zone allows the creation. It started the creation of HTML5 content provided from any SAP BTP sub account. Correct?
Yes, and in that session, we explored how business apps can be developed such that they can be accessed by SAP Build Work Zone across sub-accounts, which was the fundamental enabler for the both single-tenant cross-sub-account access as well as multi-tenant applications, so a subscription model. And this was also now the fundamental basis for implementing multi-tenancy support within Work Zone with local entry point.
Yes. And now what we have done or what has changed since then. So we want to focus on that in today's session. So now we have two parallel options that you can use to achieve entry points for SaaS applications on SAP BTP using WorkZone. So let's first look into these two options very quickly. So the first one, as you see, is the central work zone instance. Thus uses the managed app router and work zone instance to federate SaaS CDM content from HTML5 repo. And the developers, they provide only CDM definition as a part of the MTA, which is then consumed in a work zone instance on the consumer tenant as a content provider. And the second option that we have now is the multi-tenant business solutions is the local entry point. So this uses managed app router and workzone instance as a dependency service to provide read-only workzone site on subscription. So the developer basically provides its own app router and CDM definition, and can also provide the own app repo that hosts the CDM. And then the consumer tenant doesn't require a work zone instance.
That sounds incredibly good for consumers, right? But flipping the coin for our developer audience, like who's probably watching, tuning in for the Devtoberfest, the big question is, what is making this magic happen?
Yes, that is the real question that we have to solve today. So for the people who are building these multi-tenant solutions, what's their journey? What is it looking like? What are the key technical things or the prerequisites they need to brace for this journey?
So this in this process, I mean, it's built on the principles developers might already know, like cross-sub account federation of business solution. So the expectation is that you are familiar with SaaS development, best practice on BTP to follow along through this session. So you likely already have a multi-tenant CAP application. That's the, I mean, CAP application as in cloud application programming model. So you're not starting from scratch, and you're building on an existing pattern, right? Which is also the best practices from BTP development perspective. And just that now we have local entry point, which is another option which provides much awaited freedom to use own app router, defines own launchpad experience, and yet use all the goodness of work zone, like role-based access, layouting, and much more that we shall see in today's session.
Yes, that was a lot of us explaining. We wanted to keep it short, but we got into a nice conversation. But now, Rupam, let's show our developer audience here how all of this actually works like and looks like in action. Maybe you can take over the screen from here.
Sure, please. I will share my screen and give me a nod if you can see it.
Mhm.
Do you see my
Yes,
screen?
yes, we do.
Well, okay, good. Let's start with the basis on which we will show the demo for today. As one is, first of all, it's based on this incidents app. Now, if you ever explore the SAP BTP developer guide to take, let's say, a CAP-based SaaS development tutorial, you most probably have come across the incident management sample app, right? We start from same well-known incident management app, which is already set up for multi-tenancy, and show you how you can use local entry point of work zone to enable the SaaS entry point experience for your end user. So first of all, you would need to find a way to tell work zone what your SaaS offers, like what applications and how you want to lay it out, and how would the user experience it based on their roles. So we do this by providing what we call a JSON file, a CDM JSON, which includes all the information of how you want workzone to lay out, who should be able to access it, and all the governing principles. And this JSON is basically defined by an exposed schema, which is called common data model. I have heard that since because it was also part of the DevToberFest last year, and I've heard that CDM is not very well understood and can be tricky to implement.
That's that's true, Rupam. I've heard the same as well, and this is why I thought maybe it's a good idea that I can give a short intro to what CDM is, so that our developer audience also understands a bit more about it. I can, uh,
That will be great. Right, you
yes, let
can take
me.
over and then yeah, I'll get back to the demo later then. It's good to give a intro
Yeah.
on C.
Okay, so what we want to show to our audience now is this slide. Yes, this. So let's start with the basics of the common data model or the CDM. So it is essentially a centralized way of describing business content in SAP Build Work Zone. So you can think of it as a blueprint, and it defines how roles, groups, spaces, and catalogs they should be represented so they can consistently be consumed across tenants and different environments. And why is this so important in our work zone in work zone? It is because of in a multi-tenant scenario where the consistency is basically everything. So the provider needs a way to develop to deliver their content, the apps, the pages, the layouts. So the consumer to their consumers in a very they want to deliver all of this in a reliable way. So CDM is the mechanism that is working in the background. So it ensures that you design centrally things that can be consumed and display in a local entry point without any manual reconfiguration. So it also helps with the lifecycle management. It updates to our apps or structures, and all of this they flow through the CDM definitions, and this is how it's basically working. And then some of the key benefits that it brings is standardization. So all the consumers see consistent stuff and governed content, of course. Then we have scalability. So the providers can push updates to many consumers just at once. So reducing, of course, time as well. And it reduces the overall admin overhead. So the consumers, they don't need to manage complex layouts, and especially in this local entry point setups to make things faster. The common data model, what we can say, is the backbone of these multi-tenant work zone scenarios. And this is the way of delivering consistent and provider-driven experience without any complexity to our consumers. And we do know also, I know, Rupam, you've got these questions. I've also seen these questions around about how it actually looks like, or what a sample layout would be for a CDM in our, or the different CDM entries in our new site experience. So just to show you quickly here, so what you see here, the whole thing in the black box, this is the whole site that we have. And then the menu on the top, this we call these as spaces. And within the menu, we have under the menu here, these are the different work pages. And these work pages are then everything in green that is shown here. So this whole gray box here and highlighted in green, these are the work pages. And in these work pages, we have different rows. And for example, here in these pink boxes, you see the contract management, the insights, these are different rows. And lastly, within these rows, we have the columns. And these columns can be cells, widgets, and for example, like a common widget could be the app tiles as you see on the screen here as well. So I hope you understand like how it would look like. And now I hand it over to you, Rupam, again to show it in our demo again.
That was really very useful. I'm sure many of the people who haven't had a chance to work with CDM before will find it useful. And let me now take you through a real CDM example. On my screen, you can already see the CDM, and I will take you through. I prepared a code walkthrough so that you can really follow along. So let me get started. So first of all, CDM JSON is basically part of the your MTA package itself. We recommend that you store it inside the work zone folder so that you know exactly where to find it, where it should belong. And let's start understanding the CDM. The first thing you would probably do is create a site entity. Now, you must understand that LEP, all the definition is on the provider side, and consumer will only expose that. So the site information, one site entity is absolutely mandatory, but one and only one site entity is allowed in LEP CDM. And this basically tells you the overall structure as to what will be there in the site. And most importantly, it explains all the site settings, like what kind of display settings that you would use, what kind of user capabilities. If you equate that, it is basically nothing but same as what you would see inside a work zone site administration console. But because we don't have that experience on the consumer side, all this is already provided under this CDM entity definition, which is then decides how the site will be laid out, what are the different site control entities. And one thing that Yumna mentioned previously, that obviously this for LEP, you must use the new site experience, which is spaces pages and spaces and work pages, basically. And yeah, uh, that's the site identity part. Let's look into the next part. What else do you need? You definitely need roles because you want to obviously give access to users based on their business roles. And this is how you equate that. These roles are nothing but you can equate that to the role collection in BTP. That's exactly how they represent. And each role in CDM must have a corresponding role collection access security JSON because that's how the role will be generated for you to assign to the users. And another key interesting factor that you must at least have one role in LEP CDM. You may have more, but that's not restricted. Next thing is catalog entity. I mean, this is an optional SAP. If you really see the catalog, this is what you have inside. You basically tell the load in the payload, what are the applications that will appear in the catalog. And then you would in the app finder, if you go, the users can find these apps in the app finder in your site experience when they go. Just before I forget, in the role part, obviously you also have to explain the all the spaces and pages that the user can access under this role and all the apps that you would probably see. Who can then access those apps? So next one would be, let's say, the spaces part. So as Yumna showed in the nice diagram, that spaces are basically a grouping functionality, which sort of collects pages and work pages within. And they can be found in the menu bar, if you remember the diagram that Yumna showed. And this is basically which is the first fundamental grouping entity under the that shows up inside the local entry point. And here, obviously, you have to tell which work pages are basically part of it. That's the content node for your payload for a space, right? And the next thing you would have to define is the work page entity. Now, this is the part within the gray box which really loads up your default work page, which show up, and you can change the work pages. You can have multiple of them. And in the work page, you basically then define, especially in the work page that we support under the latest CDM 3.2 or the new site experience, you would see everything is in a grid format, as you know showed. It's in rows and cells and columns. So you show the rows, you show the columns, and you have the cells. And each cells can have widgets, and in the widgets you can define how those things will be. And if you see, there are fundamentally everything is defined in the rows and columns, a lot of a grid layout. It's responsive, so if it have a smaller space, obviously it'll responsively fall back into the second row, depending on the space available, and so on and so forth. And there's obviously column width you can define to see how much space you give to each cell. Now, these should be multiple of twos, smallest being 4 up to 24. But again, these are integrities that you will find out from us. Documentation, so I'll not go deep into that. Next is obviously the business apps. Now, business apps is an entity which tells you what are the business apps which are part of your SaaS solution, and it tells in great details how to show the tiles, what are the different KPIs you can show in the tile, and so on and so forth. But good thing about LEP based solution is that, or LEP or any work zone based solution, even with the other thing that we covered last year, when you are using a CDM embedded within a SaaS solution, you don't have to really give such a big explanation of what the business application is all about. It basically fundamentally takes the ID and understands. I mean, this ID obviously has to be same as the what you maintain in the manifest JSON, and then it fundamentally picks up all the information from the manifest JSON for the UI app, which is part of this application, right? So this is, if you see under app, I already have incidents, and this ns.incidents is the respective application there. And obviously, you don't have to provide all that information. At deployment, all this is enriched with all the information in manifest, and you will see whatever is defined in your manifest showing up in the tile as you have expected it to. So yeah, that's how we do CDM.
Wow, that was really nice to see first. Me showing the layout, and then you showing everything, how it works in the background. So all the different entries. So, but is this all that we need to do, Rupam, or is there
No,
more
no,
as
this is
well?
just the first part, quite a major part indeed. And now let's see how works on service with this local entry point service plan play together. Like, how do you define that? How the local entry point really works with it? So for this, I will open another um, tour so that we can follow along. Obviously, all of these are defined inside your MTA, right? The MTA being the sort of the overall schema, the blueprint, where all the services are defined, all the resources, all the modules are defined, and all the dependencies are defined for any SaaS solution. I don't want to get in details of it, but let's see what are the steps you need to do to get this local entry point working. So first thing you would do is definitely, we've created a CDM, but nobody knows the CDM and nobody knows how to deploy it. So this is the first step. You copy the CDM into the deployment resource. How? You create a build script, which is like it runs before all build, and based on the build parameters is basically basically it creates the builder, which is creates the directory if it's not there in the app resource folder, and if it is there, if it basically copies the work zone CDM JSON, which you just saw, into the app resource CDM. So why is it important? Because then this CDM will be available for at deploy time. It will be bundled together and deployed, and it will be available in HTML5 repository to host it as a CDM host. And that's exactly the juice of content federation using CDM. The HTML5 repository takes care of it. All you have to do is make sure that is part of your SaaS deployment folder. Next you do is add the works on LP as a resource, reuse resource, right? So you have seen that, and you also mentioned that LEP is a new service plan for our standard work zone service. So how do you make sure that that is used in the by the SaaS solution? Of course, you have to add a SaaS, so add this service as a resource. So we are in the resource group here. Just to show you, we are on the resources. We are just like all other resources, you define HANA-DB, HTML5 repository, HTML5 runtime. So similarly, you actually define the work zone service, the LEP plan. So what are the key important things that you must provide? First of all, provider ID, which is up to you, but it is usually formatted this way. You have a name of the solution with an org and a space that gives you the definition of the provider ID and the exposure ID. So which is again a thing that you choose, which should be same as the service name that you have selected. And obviously the service plan, very important. There is the new service plan available under Workzone Standard SKU, which is called the local entry point. Again, in on the actual provider tenant side or the sub account side, you really don't need to instantiate it. It is basically all you have to do is ensure that there is the entitlement for this service plan. So when you deploy it, just use underlying and creates the respective service instance and does all the magic of gluing as on deployment. So yeah, that's the this part of creating the service. Of course, you've created the service. Now you tell each other module which needs to use this service. So first thing you would tell app router that, hey, there is this works on LEP service. Go depend on it or go use your dependency so that at runtime these are these this is the it gets the instances credentials and configuration in the VCAP service. And then at runtime, again, it injects all those details like app router uses them to integrate with workzone, like all the things that are needed by the app router while handling any requests. So this is important for the app router module to have a requires on the workzone LEP service. Then next thing is exactly same what you have to do also for the app deployer module. So app deployer module must be aware as to what is the service that is being available. So if you see app deployer module, there's the required part of workzone service, LEP service, and it uses this for the credentials and it plans the metadata and things like that. And the association of this app deployer to the workzone service really lets the deployer register the content in the correct workzone side, ensuring that the CDM exposure and provision into the same workzone instance as was configured in the resources section, so that there is always this link between all the pieces the and glues together. And then comes same thing. You define again a requires for this thing from the MTX sidecar. I think you get the pattern. You define the resource, and then you start putting dependencies for everybody who needs to know about this service. And yeah, and that's all that you need to do on the MTA YAML to get started.
Okay. Yes, so this actually looks very similar to what we did for the central work zone instance session for last year, except I see a few extra steps like the custom app router and the local entry point service, of course. So so what else is required on top of this?
Very few more tweaks, again, just for the housekeeping purposes. So I will just load another tour just to keep you organized. So the first thing you would do is you would go to the package JSON under this MTX sidecar, and you would add the work zone dependency within the package JSON. So as you can see, this is the MTX package as JSON. You have the CDS profile, and then inside that you would define the launchpad and say to the service as to what is the label and the plan that you would use. And this is step one. It's just again housekeeping, to be honest. And then you would have to in the app router define the route to the LEP landing page. That's basically the most important part. You need to ensure that the CP portal / site, when somebody gives you the app router URL to the end user, they can be routed into the landing page. So this basically says how to do the welcome file. So as you can see in the top, welcome file is CP portal site, and there are several routes mentioned here. Just for clarity, I will stop other routes so that you're not confused. And just see, this is the most important piece here that you need to maintain, bare minimal, so that your routes are available and working. And obviously, something that we have not stressed upon is that obviously the authentication type is XSUA, and the respective destination for the route would be the SRV API. Good. And then once you have done with the MTX, the app router, last thing I would say is you must have the same role collection that you define in your role in your CDM, also replicated as a access security role collection. That should be matching. Now, this ensures that each role defined in the CDM JSON has a respective role collection to which you can assign the users. And the role template reference, let's just see the role template reference. You can see obviously these are mandatory role template reference because it's a multi-tenancy callback is necessary. But to be honest, the scopes, the cap role or scope, as you say, call it, these are already can be assigned to this role collection. This basically helps you, manage the role collection assignment. You don't have to then again create a role collection for those scopes specifically and then assign separately. So you can bundle them together. In this case, I've not taken the harder route of really creating a support role and an admin role. So I've assigned both of them to this one incidents underscore GA role. And in the demo, you'll see how we basically assign this. For now, I think this is all we want to cover from the role collection perspective. Finally, one important thing is we must ensure all applications that are contributing to the uh, SaaS solution must maintain this SAP Cloud service name matching to the actual service name, which is maintained in the NTA. So if you see the uh, LEP service name, it must be matching. So if in the manifest here and all the other application, you must have the same SAP Cloud service name, which is should be uniform. Only otherwise it will not work in the sense it will not be able to load those application in your local entry point. Well, and that's all the other
Okay, so
yeah.
yeah, so are we ready to deploy now? That's very
Oh
exciting. That
yes,
was a nice
sure thing. I
tour.
mean, we are ready. So actually, all that we need to do, bare minimal to get our LP working, we are done. So next step, what a developer would usually do is use the MBT tool to build it, or use the CFCLI to deploy it, or maybe the developer has uses the CDS convenience like the CDS CLI, CDS up, and then deploys it. But for this demo perspective, I will basically skip that part, and because we've already deployed it, and yeah, it should already be available in the provider account.
So can we already like see the deployed content in BTP now? Let's
All
go and
right.
get into action then.
Yes, yes, of course. So I'm just going to refresh because most probably I'm timed out, but just so that I am back again. So here's the very generic LEP provider sub account. This is where I've deployed the application I just showed you after building and using the CFCLI. And now you can see that the incident build work zone service is already instantiated with the service plan local entry point. Obviously, the service that is associated with this is SAP Build Work Zone standard itself, and there is a corresponding plan there. And there are other such services which obviously, as you deploy the MTA, all of these services get generated, like the demo DB. So obviously, before you deploy to a provider account, obviously you must have a HANA instance and enable the HANA tooling for it. Plus, once you do that, the respective demo DB would be generated, the repo host would be created, service instance, the runtime service instance would be created, and that's the basis of it. I will talk about the other services when we go to a little bit more advanced demo, but right now, if I put it this way, this is how it is. And uh, this is how the provider
Okay,
side looks
that's
like. Yeah.
okay. So that's very convenient for the administrators on the consumer side. So, well, so just this is just one clip subscriptions to assign roles to the user, but I can see from the launchpad of the LEP that there's more than just one incident management app tile, right?
Yeah, you've seen that, but let's just take you through that part. Let's see how it is done on the
Okay.
subscription side, right? So I will go to one of the consumers that I had set up. So if you see that barebone consumer, right? This is the barebone consumer UI, and the if you see there's only one subscription here. How do we do that? Basically, you go to Service Marketplace, and as soon as it loads, okay, it's already there. This is the one which we did. If you just go back and look into the respective MTA, which is here. Sorry, is here. If you see the MTX sidecar, we explain. Where is it? Sorry, not this. I need to. Right. If you see the dependencies and all the namings that we've done for the service, one second, where's the registry? I hate this. That's why I created those code tours because I often forget where I've created the registry, app module, service module. SaaS registries. This is what it brings. So if you see the sample incident management app works on LEP demo, all this translates into how you see it in your service marketplace. This is how it comes up. You basically create a instance of it. I've already done it, so that's why you already can see it in your instance and subscription. You basically click on it and get it done. Let me try to do this once more for us. I have LEP consumer or a sub account actually completely empty. To be honest, there's no subscription at all. Even CF is not enabled. And let's try and see if I can quickly subscribe to it, just to show you the simplicity administration, how on the consumer side is. So let's see. We can select this one. In this case, it's not created. We select the service, only one plan. It could be more complex, but again, as a demo, it's just this and the plan. And I say create. It basically goes to try and subscribe to the SaaS solution. And we should be able to see it generates a respective URL, which already comes from the local entry point. You can just give this URL to everybody. There's some caveat to it. I'll explain to it what are the caveats you would need to do. Once this is coming back, so while it is doing, I'm not wait for it and go back to the one which we already have. So once this is back, you would get this, which can automatically directly launch the local entry point page. But how did we do it? One of the topic that you must do is you have to go into your uh, on the provider side, at least for the development purposes, you need to go into the spaces, and in the spaces part, you need to assign a route to the respective. So this is the one which is yeah, this is the one which is already assigned. That's why it is working for LEP demo. You have to create a route and bind it to the app router. But this is already there in the documentation. It's quite simple flow. And usually for advanced production side, you can also use more advanced, not complicated, but simpler route wildcards to get to this particular setting. So again, let's go back to this application. So if you remember the CDM that we showed, there was an incident app, and all these are placed inside the respective page space, which is LEP space. This is the work page, which, as Yumna mentioned, becomes the entire grid. And then there is this column with all the rows in it, right? And here, the incident management application, as you all know very well, you can just launch it, and it launches in place within the local entry point module. Obviously, all the respective navigations are working, and this is basically your launchpad experience. And this is what you were mentioning, Yumna, right? That you already see some extra things. So let's dive into that and see what are the additional goodness you can add to local entry point. And perhaps this is only in this DevToberfest that you probably get to witness this. And we have not really gone publicize these things much. So let's start with the dynamic tile, right? So I will show you the dynamic tiles concept, how it is done. So I'm talking about this, and obviously there is this difference between this static tile and dynamic tile is the KPI that you see as a numeric value, which is often good to gives you a richer feeling and also gives you ways to show already user how many items of interest are there. So first thing you would do to get a dynamic tile is obviously you to enter the dynamic CDM entry for the dynamic app. So obviously I added to the respective role. Next you would do is positioning of the dynamic app inside the page. So as you can see, it is first of all in column 1 1. I have column 1 1, row 1 1, so row 1, column 1 1 1. You have the incident tile, and then column 1 2 in the same row you have the added the dynamic app tile. That's why you see next to each other. This is row 1, column 1, row 1, column 2. And then we can, once you have defined the layouting for the card, you can also, now we go into the manifest within the application. So if let's see, there is this respective application. Um, Sorry, one second. This is actually pointing to the dynamic application. This is the application, by the way, at the background, which you're seeing. And inside the respective web page, uh, sorry, web app, you will see the manifest. And this manifest, what I wanted to show is that in the real connection of that particular KPI that you see is added here through the indicator data source here. And this is connected to the main service, and the main service calls the item. But you might be wondering, how does it then pick up the data? So for the demo purposes, what we have done is we've created uh, route which routes to a destination called backend, which is again serving the number of items, the items count. And where is this coming from? This is coming from I mean, for demo purposes, again, we wanted to show that there is possibility to actually have more service providers, not just the CAP service. So if you see, this is a dummy Node.js server. And I'm just going to say it's very simple. It goes through the route and basically returns a random number. You will see that in the random number expression here. What it does is every time someone asks for a count, it just does a random number between 1 and 999. And that's what you see here now. If I refresh it, it'll be changing. But that's basically a simple example to show how the routing will be patched through. And if you see, once this is done, you would need to add this obviously to the app deploy module. Like any other application, this should also be added. And the dynamic app module should also be obviously created like any other application in your MTA. Once you do that, the backend service module also has to be added, which is if you do not want to use a separate one, if you want to continue to use the CAP service, you obviously don't have this overhead. And again, finally, the uh, app router destination in the backend app must be maintained. So in the backend app, you say that there is an app router destination for the backend app, which is called backend, and the group is destination called backend, and basically routes to this hosted Node.js package. But in all this will result in the dynamic tile here, which shows this thing. And this also works across different things. So if I were to now, let's say, go to another consumer, which I already subscribed previously, let's say, this is another, I call it consumer 99. And if you see consumer 99 and consumer 00, they both have their own tenant information flowing in. Here you can already see the different solar panel broken LEP consumer 99, whereas here you see consumer 00. It's basically tenant information separation. Everything is working as expected. And that's it for the dynamic tile. So the other thing that you saw, Yumna, is the card. This is, I'm very happy to present that we do have some glimpses of it. And I will take you through that immediately, which is nothing but UI card. So before we go, I think we need to give a disclaimer that UI card demo here is only a lab preview. We do not recommend that to use directly already, but you can see already what you can achieve with this current scenario. So let's get that. First thing you remember is UI cards are nothing but an app visualization, right? You have a business app, but instead of having a tile as a visualization, you have app as a card as a visualization. So what you do is basically you add the respective visualization payload and give the entire manifest inside the CDM today. We will work on making it rather convenient, but as of now, you can actually have the entire payload of the card visualization as a manifest that you usually do with UI cards. And if we follow the tour along, the payload contains the entire card manifest, as I just said. Then you will see the card data is fetched from the incident cap service. As you can see, what I've done is I've created the respective request URL to this, and this is the path available from the same cap service, which is powering the data for the incidents app, and use that in the card to show. And of course, question is how does it resolve this destination, because it's not running. You did not create any consumer destination, right? We don't need to, because we cheekily provided what we call the a destination routing, which reroutes it whenever it comes to the destination/SRV API. It reroutes it to the actual SRV API, which is already hosted, which the UI5 application uses anyway. And we just call it destinations because that's the pattern you might have in your mind with cards, but it's basically not using any destinations per se on the BTP side. But again, finally, obviously, once the card is bound, you have to do the UI elements binding. So this is the value that is coming from the status description because there's an expand for us, and then the respective title here, which comes from the title property of the cap service response. Finally, if you and going forward, you have to obviously also assign navigation properties within your card. So this is working with the navigation property. I'll just shortly show after we in the demo in the thing, and then you have to obviously add this into the role. So for the card to show up again, the card doesn't show up for everybody. The card shows up. You must add this UI card in the CDM to the respective app section of your role, and only then can this appear. So only those who have the role can see the card. And let's just see. So this is how the card lays out now. It's all part of the CDM, fetching data from the same incident service. And when you click on it, what happens is basically it knows the navigation path to the respective incident in itself, which is what you would really expect from, let's say, a card and the respective navigation within. So yeah, that's what is there for UI integration cards, right? And
That's really impressive, Rupam. So now we saw the dynamic tiles. We also saw the UI integration cards. These are the things that actually make the Launchpad experience richer, and the SaaS developers can provide a lot more value, of course, with these the in the Launchpad UI itself. But what about the standard capabilities? So what can we expect from like Fury applications access via work zone, like theming support or user personalization? Can you maybe walk us through that as well?
wonderful, because I'm sure if you want to use a entry point like this, where you will want all those goodness of Workzone also available. So I'll first let me take you through the theming support that we have, right? So let's just go here. And let's talk about the theming. So what are we doing in theming? So how do we do this? And basically, you're right, Yumna, that everybody would expect that theming is also supported like we do in Workzone standards if you were to use a Workzone instance itself. And obviously, consumers would want to brand it based on their own company branding as well. So first of all, you have to ensure that there is a CDM entry for the site in this for the site settings. So inside the CDM, in the site settings, where you define all the properties of which themes are supported, you maintain that here, the default themes and all the available themes. Usually you do it in the Workzone site admin center, but obviously as you don't have it in consumer, it is all provided automatically by the provider to start from. So there is a default theme defined for you and the available themes. Next, what you do is you basically add the theming service as a resource in the MTA file. So again, like you did the Workzone service, you define the MTA theming service here, which basically points to the theming service available in BTP. It's an additional service of which you should have, by the way, entitlement in your provider sub account for it to work. And then you add the theming resource dependency in app router model, exactly how you did for the low LEP Workzone service. You then tell every other module that, hey, there's this theming service. Please go ahead and uh, interact with it in your runtime. And then you do the same thing for the MTX sidecar. And finally, the next part would be in the package JSON of your MTX sidecar. You would also have to tell the respective CDS required to the VCAP service of theming so that they can already pull the theming content at the while the packages are generated and then deploy correctly. These are important artifacts that we have to maintain for the theming to work. And finally, you have to assign a role collection, right? So let's just open this role collection and see how it looks. I've added a name role collection. This is convenience, right? Because then you don't have to, again, get the role in the BTP cockpit in the consumer side and assign a role. This role will automatically be generated. And yeah, that's how you do theming. And let's just see it in action. So if I were to go into here, first of all, I want to say that there is, let's go here and say there is a respective service marketplace just to show you there's a theming service, and that's what we are depending on. Oh no, I'm in a spaces. So, but anyway, you can see this here, UI theming designer. That's another separate service that the naming is theming. And what do we do? Once we deploy this, what does the customer see? So they would then be able to see all the default themes available. So first of all, if I'm a theme manager, how do I become a theme manager? The role collection that I created in CDM would appear here. So let's just call it LEP. You see LEP theme admin, which we created there, which adds the capability to first of all launch the theme admin as well as the editor, theme designer basically. And if I go back to the runtime and if I go to my theme, I can be a theme manager. Here, if I can see, I can enable all of these for selection. I can administrate which one is user can select, which is the default. And for a user themselves, will probably see that under the settings and appearance. As of now, in the default is morning horizon, let's do this evening horizon. If I save it, this particular user has switched over because he can. But how do you do custom theming? That's a good point. If because we have enabled this, if the customer has the respective, let me see where it is. Yeah. For example, in the LEP Consumer 99, there is a theming service subscribed to in addition. So if you see here, it has the incident management app and the UI theme designer. Because we have that, the customer in this particular tenant can also go ahead and create custom themes. Basically, you can go to theme manager, go to theme designer and create a custom theme. But I've already done that to showcase. So there's this Acme custom theme, which you can then apply. And then it basically oh, okay. This is not how you apply. This is showing that you can enable it. And as a user, then can see this inside their individual themes that they can select. Or you can also make this default, by the way. And this is how a custom theme will look with a custom icon and all that. But I know, Yumna, your eyes are paining right now because of the color choices I make. So I'm
The
not the
color
best at
con
what. Sorry. Sorry with the audience as well. I'm definitely not so good with colors. But I think the idea has come across that you can do custom theming and consumer branding for the LEP solution. Well, the next part I would want to really run you through is the topic of the other question that Yumna you raised, which is the question of personalization. So personalization is provided via the Flex services. Again, another sister service of WorkZone, which gives us all the goodness of personalization and key user adaptability. So first thing you would do obviously is enable Flex in the manifest of the application itself. So I'm in the manifest of incident application. So incident management and that I'm enabling Flex. So that's the first step anyway. Once you have that, obviously what you do is in this MTX sidecar, like you did for theming, you add the respective service entries for the flexibility key user service as well as the personalization service. This will individually enable. So key user adaptation allows you to adapt the UI application. Personalization allows the end users to store their personalizations like, columns that they want and the variants for their filter bars and all that. So next thing you would do is go to XSAP JSON and maintain the flex routes, which is again very similar. If you open that, see that there is the personalization flex route available, which points to the respective service, and then the flex key user route, which points to the service. So you can actually give some users the key user, which are basically key users, and everybody else the personalization service access. And next thing you would do is flex service needs to be added as a resource because you're going to use it. So you have added this personalization and key user service. Once you have done that in the MTA, like every time, you have to go and set the dependency for the app router module to the personalization services or the resources that you have defined, and finally also to the MTX sidecar module. Once you have done this, your services are now, your application is basically now ready for personalization and things. So let's just see. I'll go into application incident management application, and I've already created these variants, and these are persisted because of the personalization services that we created, and I have created a personalized column view, and this is actually available everywhere, and you can edit it and save it, and this will remain so for individual consumers and individual users within the consumer tenant. They can persist it because of the personalization service. And quickly, I don't want to show anything around how you do, let's say, adaptation of UI. This is a very well-known topic, but just a quick demo that in LEP also on the consumer side, the key user can go ahead and adapt this For example, I can go to toolbar actions and I say, oh, no, this is not the one. Let's take some other example. Yeah, so let's say go to the configurations and I say, no, I don't want to do table export. I want to disable it. And yeah, I don't want to allow sorting and whatnot. And then whatever. Then this is what you have applied. You basically activate this, save this, activate this. And once you do that, you have this available. So you can reload to say, see the view, and you will see the respective changes coming in. Obviously, I can switch off the thing. And you see that the respective download button for Exposer is gone because you adapted the UI. Well, that's all from the theming and Flex services.
That's really great and so much amazing stuff. So, but I was just curious and thinking about if we want to do if they want to do more complex user experience changes within LEP, are these customizations also possible?
A brilliant question. I mean, rest of it, as I said, this is, and we agree that this is a technology we are enabling. So we have something called shell plugins, which really enables you to customize it further, but with your own personal code, which means, I mean, Shell's plugins are known, very well known. So you can basically create this as just like a UI5 application with just a small change that SAP FLP type should be a plugin. So if you see here, this is the manifest from the Shell plugin, which is here under the web apps, sorry, under the app section, Shell plugin. And here it's basically, if you see the structure, it's just another UI5 application. Only differences in the respective manifest, you will see that the type is of plugin. That's the only difference. And once you assign it that way, it doesn't basically have a UI element to it, which will be appearing inside your Launchpad experience, but rather, and hence don't provide any cross navigation, no tiles, etc. But rather, it's loaded in the bootstrap of the shell itself, the workzone shell that you see on all around, and it loads asynchronously. And before all other apps, basically, it just loads and the sequence, and you will see that the shell plugin component init code takes effect. So what can you do in that? Let's just take you through that. So this is the component of the shell plugin. And inside the component of the shell plugin, this init is called basically in the lifecycle of shell load inside in when the work zone is initialized. And if you see, it basically allows you to take control, create some, sort of header items and all that. And then you can take control of the renderer extension from the shell. These are exposed APIs. You can look into the UI5 documentation and then add these kind of UI elements like buttons or add a pop-up or many other things. So obviously, to be honest, it's more or less depends on what you can imagine, to be honest. It's like you can add any kind of UI, you can change the shell behavior in many other ways. And that's what really is a limitless customization that a consumer side can expect, or rather the providers can provide on top of what LEP supports out of the box. So, and then obviously what you have to do is, because Shell plugin is also another application, needs to be added into the app section of your role, which can be, again, role-based access. So not all shell plugins simply work for everybody. Only the ones that have users that have the respective role where the shell plugin is added will be able to access the, or get use of the shell plugin. And next is you basically have to add the module entry for shell plugin like every other application inside an MTAR application. You go to the app MTA references as well, obviously to the app deployer. It ensures that your shell plugin is deployed like any other application, any other UI app that you have inside your MTA. So all these are basically behaving the same way. And at this point of time, you are done with the shell plugin creation. So you can create your customized shell. And I created two of them to show you. One being the like consumer, the provider might actually want to get a feedback form and they might want to add a button on the top shell. And this is how you could use it. You could just add a shell and then use the callback, handle callback with and add the frame and then whatever the data request and what the user gives to put a feedback form. I can imagine many other ways. So one more imaginative way that I thought of would be to celebrate Devtoberfest with this. This icon shell bar button wishes you happy Devtoberfest. Well, with this, I am through with all the demos that I could show.
Wow, that was a lot of demos that we saw today. Maybe I'll take over the screen from you again and let me start. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen again, Rupam?
Yes, we can.
Yes. So
So
maybe
I think
you
I'll
want
just
to,
quickly
yeah.
summarize. So we've seen shell plugins, we've seen a lot of things and Flex and all that. I just want to make sure that it's not so complex. And because if you want to have those advanced features, great. If you don't, the flow is rather simple. What you already do for, let's say, a cab-based SaaS solution, all the white boxes here are basically all the SaaS solutions that you already use for. And only this, I'm not 100% sure which color is this. I will call it orange and bear with me, whatever you think it is, please keep it in your mind. These are the boxes which are extra you do. Basically create an app router and add it to the MTA YAML on a high level and create the dependencies to the work zone LEP service to every other plans like app router, MTX sidecar, and the app deployer. Everything, not the app deployer, sorry, the other service instances. And then everything else remains the same as you would anyway do for any SaaS solution, deploy and release. And what does the consumer do? Very simple. What was previously a hard work for a consumer admin is now completely under the hood happening. When you click on the subscribe, all the subscription is happening under the hood. And what comes back is nothing but a app router URL that automatically points you to the LEP welcome site. And the only topic part that you must do is basically assign the respective users who can access your application and assign the respective roles to the user so that they can get it. And that's it. The consumer part is done. For end user, nothing to worry about. You basically authenticate like you do in any BTP scenario via IAS or your and then basically you get routed to the provider sub account and you see a layout which is local entry point giving access to all the applications and cards and shell plugins which allows your which is allowed based on your role access.
Great. That was a very, very nice summary also to just show that it's very simplified and very nice. So thank you, Rupam, for taking us through all of this. So just to recap all that we have seen to date, so it's basically in the end, as I hinted in this beginning as well, we have now two approaches to support multi-tenancy in WorkZone. And let's just look at quickly the main differences that are there. So when we talk about the consumer side work zone instance, if you go with the central work zone instance approach, a consumer side instance is required and either standard or advanced. But with the local entry point approach, it's not required at all. Right, Rupam?
Uh, Maybe you can also share with our the viewers about the app router management, the differences.
Yes. So again, in the central work zone instance model, the app route is managed out of the box and it's all set up for you. And on the other hand, in the local entry point models, you need a standalone app router. So the good thing is that it's extensible and so you can have more flexibility if you want to like customize as well.
Exactly. And and how is the site administration handled between the two? This is also a unique difference, right?
Yeah, so in the central work zone instance, the site administration is in the hands of the consumer. So they have the full work zone instance running in their sub accounts. They can manage it directly. But on the other hand, in the LEP model, we have consumers, they don't administer anything on their end. So instead, the provider manages everything as site properties in the content delivery, so in the CDM, basically.
And lastly, what is the difference with the layout customization possibilities?
Yes, that's another big difference. So in the central works instance approach, the consumers can fully customize the layout. Their administrators can define the spaces, the pages, and even they can federate business application. And in contrast to that, in the LEP approach, the layout is fixed by the provider and it's defined in the CDM, and the consumer groups aren't also supported. Just to add to that.
Yep. Yeah. So in short, central workzone instance gives consumer more control and customization, whereas local entry point keeps things simple but more provider controlled. And yeah,
Yeah, exactly. That's the key distinction. So, with that, we would want to say thank you very much from our side. Thank you for joining us. We thank you for your questions. Also, we will answer them via chat or and yeah, thank you very much. And I would like to hand it over to Rekha again.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Yumna and Rupam, for this excellent and thoughtful session. It was a very deep dive, and we got to learn a lot of key concepts around local entry point. Like you showed the demo about multi-tenancy support, how the local entry point feature simplifies multi-tenant integration and reduce administrative overhead within SAP Build Work Zone, and it doesn't need SAP Build Work Zone instance. That is very interesting for us. Um, and thank you, everybody, for being with us so far. I hope you have found this topic helpful. I would like to quickly remind you that at the end of the day, we will release a session tutorial to test your knowledge and understanding about all the sessions you have taken this day. It has 6 questions based on all the 6 sessions of today and carries 1,200 points. Do complete it and earn the points to progress in the Devtoberfest game board. Wish you all a pleasant time ahead. Thank you.